vow of faith in the form of a gift to his ministry. This is what he says, quote, "I like a $1,000 vow because I don't like half-hearted people lukewarm. Just, well, I'll do a little. I like a $1,000 vow of faith." I'm not talking to you that's got it. You that's got it, don't pay a bit of attention to me. I'm talking to you that don't have it, and I'm showing you how you can get it. Yes, the Lord's work gets a portion of it, but you get the biggest portion. You get the biggest blessing. I'm trying to talk you out of that dump you're in. I'm trying to talk you into a decent car. I'm trying to help you. Quit cursing me. Quit cursing me. God, what will pull this blessing from you? I am a blessing. I have been blessed supernaturally by God. I bring a blessing to you this day, and I know it, and my responsibility is to take it to you. Then Tilton encourages his listeners to pray the prayer of faith, not one of those, "Lord, if it be thy will." I know what the will of God is when it concerns healing and prosperity and divine direction. I don't have to pray a prayer of doubt and unbelief. In other words, Robert Tilton wants you to make a $1,000 vow of faith to his ministry, especially if you can't afford it. He doesn't want you to pray for God's will on the matter. After all, you can demand what you want, and God must give it to you. What's the difference what God's will is? Set your vow at 1,000, demand that God provide the money, send it to him, and wait to get rich. And as I said, some people are getting rich. And a lot of people are $1,000 poorer. Richard Roberts, echoing his father's seed faith concept, urged viewers to sow a seed on your MasterCard, your Visa, or your American Express. And then when you do, expect God to open the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing. Oral Roberts once mailed out plastic bags full of holy water from the River of Life fountain at ORU. To demonstrate how to use the stuff, he poured a bag of it over his own wallet on his television program while standing knee-deep in the fountain. And that's supposed to be the key to getting your cargo delivered. Why do so many believers, supposed believers, try this stuff and don't get rich? Fred Price explains, quote, "If you've got $1 faith and you ask for a $10,000 item, it ain't going to work. It won't work. Jesus said, according to your faith, not according to God's will for you. In his own good time, if it's according to his will, if he can work it into his busy schedule." See him mocking God and mocking the concept of God's will. He said, according to your faith be it unto you. Now I may want a Rolls Royce and don't have but bicycle faith. Guess what I'm going to get? A bicycle. But guess what he's got? Thus, God's ability to bless us supposedly hangs on our faith. Now, note that both Price and Tilton recoil from the idea of praying, "If it be thy will." But that's exactly what the Bible teaches. This is the confidence, 1 John 5:14, which we have before him, that if we ask anything, what? According to his will, he hears us. Hagen goes so far as to claim that no such truth is taught in the New Testament. Quote, "Because we didn't understand what Jesus said, and because we've been religiously brainwashed instead of New Testament taught, we watered down the promises of God and tacked on something that Jesus didn't say and added on something else to it. Well, he will all right if it's his will, but it might not be his will," people have said, and yet you don't find that kind of talk in the New Testament. It's in mine. Hagen has also written, quote, "It is unscriptural to pray if it is the will of God. When you put an if in your prayer, you're praying in doubt." Romans 8:27 tells us that even the Holy Spirit intercedes for the saints according to the will of God. Far from stressing, beloved, the importance of wealth, the Bible warns against pursuing it, doesn't it? Believers, especially leaders in the church, are to be free from the love of money. The love of money leads to all kinds of evil. Beware, Jesus warned, and be on your guard against every form of greed, for not even when one has an abundance does his life consist of his possessions. Luke 12:15. In sharp contrast to the word faith gospel's emphasis on gaining money and possessions in this life, Jesus said, do not lay up for yourselves, what? Treasures on earth. And he also said in Matthew 6:24, you can't serve God and money. This is really not Christianity. This is not New Testament theology. The concept that the universe, God, is governed by some impersonal spiritual law is not biblical. It is a denial of God's sovereignty and God's providence. It is really a form of deism, if a somewhat ignorant one. Furthermore, the notion that we can use words mystically and magically to control reality is far removed from the biblical pattern of faith. And believe me, has more in common with Christian science than Christianity. Most word faith teachers vehemently deny that their teachings have anything to do with Christian science or other metaphysical cults, but they do. I don't know how you can distinguish between the two. Now I want to say something, and I want you to listen to it. The word faith movement, Kenneth Hagin, Kenneth Copeland, Fred Price, Charles Capps, Robert Tilton, et al., and it goes on and on from there, can be traced all the way back. Every major figure in the movement was mentored by Kenneth Hagin or one of his close disciples. Every doctrinal distinctive of the movement is traceable to Kenneth Hagin, who is in Tulsa, Oklahoma. There's a book called A Different Gospel by D.R. McConnell. And one of the things that's very fascinating in that is that McConnell points out that Kenneth Hagin gleaned these teachings from the writings of a faith evangelist named E.W. Kenyon. In fact, I quoted earlier to you that Kenneth Hagin said he got all of this from the Lord. The truth is that he plagiarized much of it. In fact, McConnell states that Hagin plagiarized the writings of a Christian Missionary Alliance minister named John A. McMillan. A man named W.R. Scott gives solid evidence that these accusations are true as well. Specifically, it is incontrovertible that Hagin lifted at least 3/4 of his book, The Authority of the Believer, verbatim from Macmillan's magazine article of the same title. Scott also documents Hagin's plagiarism of Finis Jennings Dake, who wrote a very interesting study Bible called the Dake Study Bible. In other words, huge sections of the writings of Hagin have been plagiarized from other sources. He not only borrowed ideas from Kenyon, but McConnell includes several pages of column-by-column text that proves beyond question that Hagin repeatedly plagiarized long sections of the writings of E.W. Kenyon, word for word for word for word for word. And so there's a kind of historical track. Kenyon's roots were in the metaphysical cults. He was a faith healer, not in the Pentecostal tradition, but in the sense of Mary Baker Eddy and Christian Science. He attended a college that specialized in training lectures for the metaphysical science cults, and he imported and adapted into his system most of the essential ideas these cults propagated, and Hagin absorbed them from E.W. Kenyon, in many cases word for word. The truth of it is, McConnell's book is a devastating expose, the book entitled A Different Gospel, published by Peabody in 1988. It is a devastating expose of the word faith movement, demonstrates irrefutably that the word faith teachers owe their ancestry to groups like Christian Science